Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are getting into something that is, honestly, it operates at the absolute edge of applied esoteric mechanics.
It really does, yeah.
We're skipping right past the theoretical stuff today. We're going straight into the architectural. The source material we've got on the table is this fascinating, highly granular manual. It's called Creating Magical Entities.
Right. Compiled by David Michael Cunningham with a lot of really heavy contributions from Taylor Elwood and Amanda R. Wagoner.
Exactly. And look, if you are joining us for this deep dive, you are likely already somewhat familiar with the broader strokes, right? Manifestation, sigil work, manipulating subtle energies. But what we are unpacking today is, well, it's the absolute pinnacle of self-directed servitude.
Servitude being the key word there.
Yes. We are going to examine the exact step-by-step life cycle of engineering a bespoke thought form, giving it a conceptual reality, binding it to a very specific localized task, and then, crucially, programming its eventual termination.
Which is the part most people skip.
Oh, absolutely. So to put it simply, what if you could literally build an invisible assistant out of pure thought to do your bidding, to manage your life, or, I don't know, even handle your traffic jams?
It sounds like pure fantasy when you frame it like that.
It does.
But it's meticulously structured.
Okay.
What stands out immediately when you read this text is that the authors, they don't waste any time trying to convince you that this is objectively real in some materialistic sense.
Right. No vague mysticism?
No, none of that. They root the entire practice in deep psychological focus, symbolic programming, and the deliberate segregation of your own cognitive processes.
So whether you approach this as literal astral mechanics or just as an incredibly complex psychological framework designed to hack your subconscious, the operational steps are identical.
Identical. The underlying thesis is just that the mind is a microcosm of the universe. So if you can identify a specific desire, isolate it from all the chaotic noise of your everyday consciousness, and anthropomorphize it into a distinct servant.
You bypass the psychic sensor.
Right. You bypass the sensor and manifest results with surgical precision.
Surgical is a great word for it. The book actually defines this entity as a vital principle held to give life to an immaterial essence. So it's not a familiar, it's not a pet.
No, absolutely not a pet.
It's a highly specialized construct born directly from your own subconscious. But before the text even touches on how to conceive this thing, it spends a ton of time on the prerequisite state of the creator.
The baseline architecture.
Yeah. They basically argue you can't just sit down, draw a symbol, and expect a functional construct if your own internal architecture is a mess. Why the heavy emphasis on physical and mental attunement before any of the actual occult work even begins?
It comes down to the fundamental laws of energy direction. The text posits a strictly mechanical view of the operator's mind and body. I mean, you cannot direct external energy if you have zero mastery over your internal state.
Makes sense.
If your baseline cognitive state is chaotic or fragmented or even just physically depleted, any entity you attempt to spin out of your subconscious is going to inherit that exact fragmentation.
So a tired creator makes a tired entity.
Exactly. The authors prescribe a rigorous grounding regimen. They require a stable meditation routine. They specifically recommend Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, yeah, that stood out to me.
Right, because they view it as a moving meditation that maps the physical flow of energy, which is crucial for when you later attempt to move non-physical energy into a physical housing object.
And they get into the thermodynamics of the physical body, too, mandating unprocessed foods, steamed vegetables, pure water, cutting out caffeine.
They even mandate a strict sleep schedule. The logic is purely systemic. If the biological battery is drained, the astral projection will be anemic. It just won't work.
Sweating is even framed as a method for clearing somatic blockages. But beyond the physical stuff, there was this specific mental conditioning exercise they mandate that really caught my attention.
The 10 solutions exercise.
Yes. They require you to systematically force neuroplasticity. Every time you face a hurdle in your daily life, you have to write down 10 completely different solutions, no matter how absurd they seem. What is the mechanical purpose of that?
It's designed to shatter linear thinking. When you construct a magical entity, you are essentially programming a system to find the path of least resistance to your goal.
Okay.
If your own mind is trapped in binary linear problem solving, you will inadvertently program those exact same limitations into your entity.
Oh, I see.
By forcing your brain to generate 10 solutions to a mundane problem, say a broken pipe, you train your subconscious to see multidimensional possibilities, lateral routes. Non-obvious routes.
Because when you deploy the entity, it needs the operational flexibility to navigate reality.
Right, in ways your conscious mind might not immediately perceive. And this expansive thinking is necessary because of the strict parameters of the law of cause and effect, which the text treats as a rigid mechanic of energy blowback, not just a moral philosophy.
Right? They mention the threefold law, or karma, but they frame it like a physical law of action and reaction. You are the source code for the entity, so you absorb the systemic blowback of whatever it does. You can't just deploy a psychological hitman and claim your hands are clean.
No, you absolutely cannot.
And they provide a highly specific case study from Amanda Wagner to illustrate this blowback. She engineered an entity named D-Watcher. It was specifically designed as a hostile egregore to degrade a duplex she used to live in.
Under bad circumstances, yeah. The structural breakdown of that D-Watcher case is probably one of the most instructive parts of the whole manual.
Walk us through it.
Well, Wagner was meticulous in her deployment. She anchored the egregore to the physical property by drawing the entity's programming symbol on thumbtacks.
Thumbtacks, wow.
Yeah, and embedding them deep into the infrastructure of the duplex. Under the carpets, behind cabinets, inside the closets.
So it's physically wired into the house.
Exactly. And she programmed it with a specific feeding loop. It was to sustain itself on the ambient energy of the inhabitants, and its output was localized entropy, breaking pipes, tripping electrical breakers, manifesting as a wraith-like phenomenon.
A localized, self-sustaining haunting. And she gave it a designated lifespan of 5 years.
Right. But the critical failure in her programming was a lack of target exclusion.
She didn't specify who it was supposed to attack.
Precisely. She built a machine that degraded the environment, but she didn't program a condition to recognize who was actually in the environment. And the blowback occurred when a close friend of hers unwittingly moved into the upper unit of that exact duplex.
Oh, man.
The entity didn't malfunction. It operated flawlessly according to its foundational parameters. It subjected her friend to exploding sinks, catastrophic plumbing failures, immense psychological stress.
And Wagner experienced the systemic blowback, the guilt, the energetic drain of knowing her construct was harming a friend, but being unable to easily dismantle it because those thumbtacks were hidden everywhere.
It's the text's primary warning. If you are going to engineer an entity, you must run a complete diagnostic on every possible branch of consequence. If there is subconscious hesitation or guilt, that discordant energy will cause the entity to act erratically or backfire entirely.
So, assuming you've stabilized your physical battery, expanded your thinking, and mapped out the consequences, we move into the conception phase, drafting the blueprint.
The most important part.
The text emphasizes that the entity needs a precise realm of influence. It differentiates between a general realm and a specific realm. Let's look at the classic desire for a lump sum of cash. How does the text advise structuring those parameters to avoid a disaster?
The lump sum of cash scenario is the textbook example of why the path of least resistance is so dangerous.
Right, the monkey's paw effect.
Exactly. If you construct an entity simply to acquire money, the entity will execute that command using the most efficient ambient variables. If the most efficient variable is you losing a limb in a horrific car accident and getting a massive insurance payout, the entity will facilitate the accident.
The intent was fulfilled.
Yes, the operator just failed to restrict the methodology. Therefore, the manual mandates defining the exact harmless route of manifestation. You must visualize the capital flowing through a favorable constructive channel.
So if the operator is an artist, the route isn't just bring me money, it's facilitate the sale of this specific sculpture I just completed.
Precisely. And that dictates the realms. The general realm might be commerce or sales, but the specific realm narrows the entity's operational parameters to act as an attractor of purchasers of fine art.
It's a constraint, a root command for the software. And once those realms are established, you draft the statement of intent, a single airtight sentence. For our artists, it might read to influence and attract fine art purchasers that are willing and able to purchase my sculpture for a price that I set.
It reads like a legal contract for a reason.
Willing and able. For a price that I set. Every word is a boundary wall. Now, once this is drafted, they introduce this psychological maneuver called the incubation stage. You write it down, and you physically put it away for days. You force yourself not to think about it, what's happening there mechanically.
It's a brilliant use of background cognitive processing. By consciously suppressing the thought, you hand the raw data over to the deep subconscious.
Because the analytical mind is too close to the problem.
Exactly. While you go about your day, the deep mind is continuously mulling over those parameters. stress testing the boundaries, checking for loopholes, calculating the safest route. When you retrieve the document days later, your subconscious will often push up sudden realizations, a flaw in the wording, or a better route.
They also recommend a divination protocol right after this, right? Like tarot or runes, just to run a final diagnostic on the intent.
Yes. If the reading throws up red flags, you scrap the blueprint, sleep on it, and revise.
Okay, so assuming the divination clears, we move from the blueprint to the shaping phase. The entity requires an identity, and this is where the text gets incredibly dense, cryptographic almost. Naming the entity. You don't just pick a name that sounds cool.
No, the name is literally mathematically extracted from the statement of intent.
Walk us through that extraction.
It's linguistic distillation.
Yeah.
Use the text's example. To influence and attract fine art purchasers that are able to and that will purchase my sculpture for a price that I set. First, you strip away all conjunctions, articles, and repetitive filler words.
Okay.
Then you extract the first letter of each remaining vital word. In the example, this yields a raw, unpronounceable string of letters. I-F-A-R-A-W-P-M-S-P-I-S.
Which you obviously can't chant during an evocation. So how do you refine that raw data into a trigger word?
You eliminate all duplicate letters. You scan the string and remove the second or third instances of any letter, distilling the essence. So that long string is reduced to I-A-F-R-W-P-M-S.
Shorter, but still a mouthful of consonants.
Right. This is where they introduce Pythagorean numerology to inject new vowels and shape the final name while tuning the entity's frequency. In the Pythagorean system, every letter corresponds to a number from 1 to 9, and each number carries specific esoteric associations.
So you're looking for a target number that aligns with the purpose. Selling art. You want a name that mathematically equates to magnetism, aesthetics.
Yes. In this system, the number 6 is governed by Venus, harmony, artistic expression, magnetic attraction. You calculate the numerical value of your consonants. F is 6, R is 9, W is 5, and so on. Then you strategically add vowels, which also have values, experimenting until the entire name's aggregate value reduces to the target number 6.
So through that math, they land on the name Firiwaspim, F-I-R-I-W-A-S-P-I-M. It sounds otherworldly, but mathematically, its frequency is tuned to that Venusian current.
The text also mentions a simpler alternative called the backward method, where an intent like buy new car is reversed into requinyub.
Requinyub. The goal is just creating a word with zero mundane associations. When you speak it, your analytical mind doesn't picture a normal human. It immediately triggers that isolated software. But they don't stop at the name. They use that exact same Pythagorean data to architect the physical appearance. How does the math dictate the anatomy?
Form must follow function. You map every single letter of the generated name -Firiwaspim to a specific body part, starting from the head down. F is the head, I is the neck, R is the chest, down to M for the feet. Then you apply the numerical values to determine the gender and aesthetic of each part. Even numbers are feminine or receptive. Odd numbers are masculine or projective.
Let's walk through that. The F for the head is a 6. That's even, making the head feminine. And 6 is associated with a public speaker or advisor, so it has the face of a persuasive woman.
Yes. The I for the neck is a 9, which is odd, masculine, associated with a warrior or artist. The W for the genitals is a 5, masculine, associated with quick movement and communication. You go through every letter, then tally the masculine versus feminine letters to determine the overarching gender.
With Firiwaspim, the odd numbers dominate, making it a fundamentally masculine entity with specific aesthetic quirks, like a charismatic, maybe androgynous face, designed to charm art buyers.
Exactly.
It's essentially character creation, but mathematically bound to the core intent. What is the psychological utility of agonizing over the shape of its calves based on numerology? Why anthropomorphize a concept so deeply?
Because the human brain is hardwired for anthropomorphism. We process faces, intentions, and social hierarchies far better than abstract concepts. By giving the concept a distinct face and physiology, you create a highly stable psychological anchor.
Form matches function. You wouldn't trust a frail bodyguard, so your deep mind won't trust a protective entity unless it looks like a predator or a shield.
Right. Plus, naming and categorizing a force is one of the oldest methods of asserting dominion over it. A vague cloud of energy is hard to direct. A sharply dressed salesman made of mathematical desire is a concrete tool you can wield.
So we move to the physical plane. The entity has a name, a form, a directive. But the manual insists it requires physical housing, a localized anchor in material reality. They suggest statues, bottles, jewelry, even a computer folder. But there's a strict rule. It must never physically resemble a living or dead person known to the operator. Why?
Energetic entanglement. If you house an entity in a doll that resembles your grandmother, your subconscious already has a massive web of associations and emotions tied to that likeness. When you pump the entity's programming into that vessel, the signals cross.
The entity might siphon energy from the actual person, or your own unresolved issues might corrupt the programming.
The vessel must be a blank slate, or at least its associations must be aligned with the entity's realm, completely divorced from your personal relationships.
Amanda Wagner used fairy statues for her fairy thought forms. David Cunningham used heavy brass keys, bottles, and an arrowhead for an entity needing a piercing force. They also encourage you to physically craft the housing yourself, right?
Yes, the physical labor acts as a preliminary charging mechanism. It bonds you to the vessel. But regardless of the object, it ideally needs to contain a cavity, a hollow space.
To house the core programming, the programming symbol, the sigil. You take the statement of intent and translate it into visual language,
Right.
because the deep mind processes abstract geometry instantly, whereas it struggles with English sentences.
The analytical mind reads words. The subconscious absorbs symbols.
And there are methods for this. Magic squares, tracing the numerological values across a grid. Amanda Wagner's inspiration entity, Emmer Ipsney, used a crazy method. She distilled the names of all 15 Greek muses, combined it with her intent, and mapped every letter to a value to trace this dense, overlapping geometric pattern.
To anyone else, it looked like abstract art. To her subconscious, it was a precise schematic of her desire, and she painted that directly onto the glass bottle housing Emmer Ipsney.
So we have the blueprint, the form, the vessel, the source code. But a machine needs power. The text is unambiguous. Entities need to eat. If you don't establish a feeding protocol, what are the systemic consequences?
Two distinct failure states. The first is simple dissolution. It exhausts its charge, loses cohesion, and fades back into the subconscious. The operation fails. The second, more dangerous state is that it refuses to dissolve. Driven to survive, it becomes a parasitic construct, a roaming vampire siphoning unauthorized energy from you or your environment.
So you have to hardwire a feeding protocol. Personal feeding is direct transfer. Meditation, offering plates of food or drink. Obviously, the physical matter isn't eaten. What's the thermodynamic transfer there?
Focused attention is a quantifiable, transmittable form of energy in esoteric mechanics. When you prepare a meal and dedicate it, you direct a concentrated beam of intent. The entity consumes the essence of the act. The time, the focus, the psychological weight, the food is just the focal point.
But personal feeding places a constant tax on the creator, which brings us to external feeding. The absolute genius of this manual. You program the entity to sustain itself entirely on external energy sources related to its task, like the traffic jam entity.
Right. You program its feeding mechanism to consume the localized chaotic energy generated by frustrated drivers. You program it to eat the very obstacle it is designed to eliminate.
It's brilliant. Or the homework entity that feeds on the friction of studying. When you're stuck in gridlock, the entity is suddenly in a buffet. It gorges on frustration, its power spikes right when you need it to clear the traffic. When the road clears, the food vanishes and it goes dormant.
They also suggest a hybrid model. Mostly external feeding, but a concentrated boost from the operator now and then to ensure survival during long, dormant periods.
Okay, we have the vessel, the code, the fuel. Now we throw the switch. Activation, the ritual engine. You transition the concept into active servitude, cleansing, stating the intent, aligning desire, and the spark of life. Walk us through it.
It's designed to completely saturate your sensory input to bypass the analytical mind. It begins with rigorous cleansing of the space, incense like white sage to signal a shift to sacred space. The housing and symbol are fumigated. Then you formally declare the intent aloud, vibrating the words.
Engaging the physical body. Then you align the desire using controlled breathing, like the middle pillar exercise. What is the function of the middle pillar in this moment?
It turns your subtle body into a pressurized battery of elemental intent. You draw down energy, circulate it, and visualize it, taking on a specific color corresponding to the purpose. Dense green for wealth, for instance. You pack your astral matrix with the exact frequency required.
And once you're fully pressurized, you execute the spark of life. This involves that hollow cavity. You use a physical sympathetic link to permanently bind the creation to the creator. Bodily fluids, blood, saliva, sexual fluids, hair, placed inside the vessel. What's the precedent for this?
Sympathetic magic. A part remains connected to the whole regardless of distance. By placing your genetic material inside, you create an unbreakable bioenergetic tether. They draw a parallel to the Rabbi Judah Low of Prague creating the golem. earth for the body, fire through blood, water through vital fluids, air by breathing life into it. You are enacting a microcosm of divine creation.
The breath is the carrier wave. You exhale slowly over the housing, visualizing the colored energy saturating the object. You formally name it. Then evocation and deployment. You designate the symbol as the interface and issue the command.
Right.
To truly illustrate the intensity of this, we have to look at David Cunningham's court case entity, Isaknu. Win case reversed. He was facing 6 months in jail, thousands in fines, with a notoriously harsh judge. He engineered a construct to dismantle the prosecution.
It's a masterclass in systemic stacking. He formed the body using planetary associations for a courtroom battlefield. Saturn for boundaries to bind the judge, Jupiter for legal favor, Mercury for swift communication, Mars for aggressive energy to destroy the prosecution, Moon for concealment. He visualized it as a massive, intimidating defense attorney.
And the ritual itself was dense. The 23rd hour of a Saturday, governed by Saturn, judges.
Right.
23rd hour governed by Jupiter, legal victory. He aligned the temporal coordinates. He and his wife utilized sex magic to achieve gnosis, short-circuiting the analytical mind.
The utilization of sex magic there is purely mechanical. At the moment of climax, the conscious mind goes blank, a momentary vacuum. He used that fraction of a second to violently project the fully realized image of Isaknu and the visualization of all charges being dismissed directly into his subconscious.
And he applied his vital fluid to the symbol for the spark of life, burned it in wormwood incense, deploying the entity. And the result was undeniable. He sat in court, vibrating the name Isaknu internally. The judge gave everyone maximum sentences, but when Cunningham approached, the judge sentenced him, then inexplicably suspended the sentence, waived the issues, and ordered basic court costs.
He walked out free. Flawless execution.
But, as the text severely warns, achieving the result is not the end. Terminating this servitude, entities must not be granted eternal life. You must hardwire a lifespan into the statement of intent. Cease to exist after the court case is resolved. Why is this a structural necessity?
2 reasons. First, energetic reclamation. The energy you invested belongs to your central energetic pool. If the entity is left to drift, it becomes obsolete software, draining ambient energy and cluttering your subconscious architecture. Dissolution ensures the raw energy is reabsorbed. Second is psychological.
Preventing dependence. If you rely on an inspiration entity for 10 years, your own ability to generate inspiration atrophies.
The dissolution clause is a training wheel mechanism. You force yourself to eventually reclaim that function. You formally declare the contract fulfilled, physically destroy the housing, shatter the bottle, burn the symbol. You visualize the entity dissolving into light and inhale deeply, pulling the energy back. Even perpetual entities need a self-destruct trigger word just in case they go rogue.
A complete life cycle. Now, in the final sections, they explore advanced adaptations, applying this architecture to complex systemic thought forms, like the ESC, the Energy Storehouse Entity. What is an ESC?
An astral capacitor. Its sole directive is to harvest, filter, and store ambient energy for your future use. Unused thermal energy from a radiator, light from a lamp, or volatile emotional energy. If you get into a furious argument, you have a massive surplus of adrenaline. The ESC siphons that excess, strips away the anger, and stores the pure, raw energy. When you need to perform heavy magic later, you tap into the ESCE instead of depleting your own battery.
Incredible energy management. They also delve into viral entities, constructs designed to replicate and feed on public energy currents. The book provides a very controversial case study, the Harry Potter viral entity.
Right, and just to be clear, we are just looking at the mechanics they utilized here. During the height of the Harry Potter phenomenon, the authors noted the massive outrage from certain fundamentalist groups claiming the books were witchcraft. They saw that outrage as an unharnessed pool of highly concentrated energy.
So they engineered a viral entity to feed on that fear and transmute it. They created a visceral collage image. Harry Potter boiling the Pope in a cauldron. Caption, couldn't we all use a little magic?
They intentionally designed the most offensive image possible to trigger the specific food source. Whenever someone viewed it and experienced outrage, the entity consumed that negative burst, subverted it, and utilized the energy to spread genuine curiosity about the occult among the broader public.
They plastered flyers around campuses. If you angrily ripped it down, the act of destruction fed it. If you left it up, sustained attention fed it.
But the manual includes a stark warning. Viral entities are volatile. One practitioner tried to charge this entity while listening to Christmas carols on a portable CD player. The entity, programmed to ruthlessly consume Christian-associated energy, locked onto the music. It aggressively drained the CD player's batteries dead in seconds and made the practitioner violently ill due to the rapid energetic displacement.
It's an indiscriminate engine. If you expose yourself to the food source, it consumes you too. Another advanced application hijacking pop culture egregores. The theory that if millions pour belief into a TV persona, they create a massive reservoir of energy, a localized deity. They tested this using Ms. Cleo, the 90s television psychic.
The mechanics are fascinating. The actual hotline was a commercial enterprise. But the collective belief of the audience generated an astral construct of Miss Cleo as a goddess of divination. The authors built a private siphon into that energy pool. They engineered an entity using the Miss Cleo blueprint, but programmed filters to strip out all the scam-related associations, isolating only wisdom and intuition.
And they used this entity during online tarot readings. The results were startling synchronicity, pulling identical numerological sequences across different decks. They utilized a cultural obsession to power their private operations.
And finally, Serantis, engineered by Taylor Elwood. Pushing the boundaries of space-time, Serantis wasn't built to find money. Its sole directive is to continuously scan nonlinear time and alternate probability vectors to identify favorable timelines.
An astral radar system.
It doesn't force manifestation, it just alerts the operator when a specific sequence of actions will result in an optimal outcome that the linear mind could never predict. It requires discarding a linear perception of reality entirely. The architecture is limited strictly by your conceptual framework.
We have dissected an immense amount of architecture today, mapped the entire life cycle of the bespoke magical entity, tuning the operator, drafting the blueprint to avoid blowback, numerological naming, shaping the anatomy, housing, feeding loops, the ritual engine of activation with sensory saturation and vital fluids, and the crucial dissolution clause.
A terrifyingly pragmatic framework for weaponizing human focus.
But before we close, I know you have a final structural consideration for the listener to process based on all of this.
I do. The text operates on the premise that focused intent and sustained emotion generate conceptual reality. We've analyzed the deliberate architecture required to build a helpful entity, but the manual implies a much darker, passive reality. Humans are constantly, unconsciously generating minor thought forms through repeated emotional states. So this presents a critical diagnostic question for you, the listener. If it requires this level of meticulous mathematical programming to engineer a construct that actually serves you, what kind of unstructured, parasitic egregores are you unintentionally architecting, feeding, and housing right now through your chronic anxieties, repetitive negative self-talk, and unexamined obsessions? Are you the conscious operator of your internal architecture, or are you serving as a battery for the chaotic entities you've unwittingly created?
That is a diagnostic you cannot afford to ignore. Thank you for examining the architecture with us today. Stay deliberate, monitor your energetic output, and we will analyze the next system with you on the next deep dive.